what do I want today to really have as an outcome, not as an activity, but what does that activity should lead to?
On Friday evening, I went for a nice piece of steak with myself and celebrated a fantastic, productive week because I literally had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish that week. And so, so for me, one of the lessons we need to put out here is that I meet so many business guys who are always on.
Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs, Chris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmermann, discuss timeless principles of success, significance and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
Today we want to talk about productivity and get your house in order because that's basically one of the themes that it doesn't matter at which stage in business or in life you are, that's actually a theme that you constantly kind of need to improve, learn. I love talking to business owners and we have the privilege of talking to some very successful people and asking about, what do you do for productivity? What do you do to, on the other side then to relax and recharge? But productivity is a big theme. So the promise is that if people listen now for the next minutes, that they're going to save 10 hours. Guaranteed a week because of what they kind of learn. So Chris, I thought we'll just kind of talk a little bit about productivity. What do you do for productivity? What are some principles?
I can immediately jump in on how to save 10 hours of your week. Just stop reading emails.
Yes.
That'll be probably more than 10 hours. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of business guys are playing ping pong on email. Back and forth, to fix an appointment, to get a quick answer. And I think you can create a system that you basically don't. And you don't need to be constantly on the rush. For example, on my phone, I don't even have emails on my phone anymore. But now for a couple of years, I don't even read emails on my phone, which I was constantly checking my phone. Is there a new email?
Did a new sale come in?
Is there? Yeah, and so you don't need that. So
so let's talk. I mean, email is a time waster and a big topic.
Well, people feel like they're doing work because they're on email, and that's actually not the case.
Yes, talk more about this.
Well, it gives you this adrenaline rush, kind of dopamine hype when it's like social media. It's like you're on it and you don't take notice on how much time you spend. Okay, we can. I mean, everyone knows that, but no one lives by it. Okay, so now, but now let's talk about the business terms. Email. We all feel like, email is a necessity. Like, how can you do business without email? Well, I don't. I don't read emails. So I've got a full-time assistant. I pay her to read my emails and to brief me in the morning what is in the inbox, where's someone waiting for a reply, and what can we push out. But and then she takes care of that. So I've got an assistant, and now we have an AI. AI can help us create emails and send stuff out, reply to things, and so we should be reducing our time literally behind the screen, working on emails, minimum by 10 hours a week if we put a system in place.
Well, we have a whole course as part of the self-managing business program where I actually teach on the 10x productivity. How do you really 10x your productivity? And that's not just 10 hours saving, but it's actually 10xing what you're doing right now. And what I teach is basically you need to bring three things together. You need to bring some good productivity boosters, hacks into the game. And we talk about some of them here as part of the conversation, because there is a productive way on how you can schedule the time you work. It doesn't matter if it's 6 hours, 10 hours, 3 hours, how much, there is a productive way. Then you have to have an executive assistant, basically, and then you have to use AI. And if these three things come together, and they can come together actually in a beautiful system that I kind of teach and lay out there, all of a sudden you can 10x your productivity. But let's stay with email. It's interesting that we talk to a lot of business owners who actually have an assistant or have an administration staff that they don't utilize when it comes to using their email, because they're basically maybe hesitant. They don't want to give that away. They are addicted. I was addicted a long time to email. I kind of kicked social media off my phone, but email stayed, and so I kept checking email, and so. How do you give that away to your system?
The Stephen Covey book, which is a classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He teaches the principle or the difference between what is important and what is urgent. Now, in my life, I for a long time I didn't understand the difference. How can something not be urgent and important? I didn't get that. But actually, this is the biggest difference in the world between urgent and important. And so emails are always urgent. If someone emails you, it's almost like they're interrupting. It's like phone calls. Also, people taking phone calls. So let's move from email to phone calls. You responding to a phone call is on someone else's urgency. Someone interrupts you. You may be having a beautiful dinner with your wife, or with your family. You may be in a very important strategic assessment thinking exercise at the moment, and someone calls you, and you pick up the phone and you answer that. And that can that kills productivity because it interrupts whatever you're doing. Now, if you're not organized, then perhaps you're waiting for some people to call you. I never wait on anyone to call me. So that's why I've built a whole system kind of where I only do scheduled conversations. And so one thing I would tell you is don't answer your phone. Unless Chris calls, please. Then you have to answer, of course, because I'm very important. But people are way too much responding on other people's time, and as business owners, we shouldn't be doing that. This may be for other people in our organization, they need to be available, they need to answer the phone call. But why do I need to answer a phone call? I don't. I can put up ways on how people respond. It was funny yesterday. Someone called me with a number that I didn't know, and I picked it up, and she said, "Oh, you have an insurance policy taken out, blah blah blah, and some of your former staff gave me your number," which was someone that worked for me like 10 years ago. And I was on the phone, and I basically said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know the policy, but she said, it's in your name. I said, I don't know. I have so many policies, companies, accounts. I don't handle any of that. And I basically referred them back to my office. But that was one of the rare cases where someone got through to me because they found my number somewhere. Well, you need to set up, I would say, boundaries. And here's how I would teach it actually. We all know, if you want to, let's say, get to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, it's not so easy to just pick up the phone and call him. There are levels of staff and people and protocol to get to him. Now, we all, probably say that he's one of the most productive beings that we have at the moment. What this guy is putting out in terms of decisions, executive orders, how he's starting something here and there. I mean, it's all crazy, but incredibly more productive, I would say, than other, not judging, the decision he's making, but more productive than many other presidents and world leaders. Mm-hmm. Now, think of that as a role model. Perhaps for yourself, in terms of how there needs to be different levels of how people can have access to you and to your attention. Specifically, if you're growing an organization, all of a sudden, you can be overwhelmed. There's like 50 people on staff, it's 100 people on staff, and basically everyone is kind of talking, communicating. Then you have your seller, you have your people that you buy from, you've got your customers, you've got, and it just becomes endlessly demand on you. So unless you start creating these walls, these boundaries, this hierarchy of communication, you're going to be drowning. And so this is, one of the biggest, lessons for me is you need to create a system of how you communicate and how people communicate with you.
Yeah, and it of course evolves over time, but it should get basically more difficult to actually get to you, and not less difficult. So with the phone, basically, I have two rules. Number one, I never answer if I don't know the number. That's rule number one. And number two, if I do know the number, basically a screenshot is sent to my assistant to reach out, figure out what that person wants, and either schedule a call or get the answer, because I'm not involved. So there is a way of how to actually structure and design it in a way where it basically is not interrupting you, but still people get you still get back to people. There's still a process. Now, if everything is urgent in your life, basically you need to join one of our programs, because as a business owner, if you are the firefighter, if you are the bottleneck, if your team does not move, if you don't answer 10 things a day and get back to them because they are basically held up, you are the bottleneck. You are basically not the operator, not the manager and the leader of your business. And so you really have to design a self-managing business. And so we kind of take our inspiration from Cosimo de' Medici of how he built the Medici Bank that became an empire across Europe, with a small team, and him basically be strategically involved in the business, not operationally involved in every decision. And so you have to kind of look at what are the things that are urgent and how can you basically delegate them. And then even if you are using email, if you don't give it to your assistant or have no assistant, limit it to half an hour window a day or 2 times a day where you say, this is where I'm sitting down, this is where I'm answering, because you are creating, with every email, you are creating an open loop in your mind that basically is a problem until you close it. That's why soap operas are so powerful, and all these Netflix series that don't have an ending. I don't watch Netflix series that are basically one after the other, because you get addicted to watching them. They have to be finished in the 45 minutes you allocate to it. Otherwise, I don't watch them. Doesn't matter how great they are. But because you don't want to get into binge watching, because there's open loops that basically are created, and then in your mind, basically, it's a problem in your mind until that loop is closed. And so if you just check your emails now and then you jump to the next thing, and it's not just emails, it's also WhatsApp, okay, and text. It's the same problem. And if you don't have a system for that, it's the same category. Maybe some are proud now. I've focused email, and now they are basically just moved their conversation all to text and WhatsApp, and they're constantly interrupted. Our attention, especially in an AI powered kind of world that we're entering, is your number one superpower that AI cannot take away. But basically, even using ChatGPT is now shown how basically it is not really what ChatGPT and AI is doing to our brains, and how our brains are changing if we're using them, even if we're using them effectively. And I'm all for doing that. But you have to be very careful that your attention is really not suffering. And I have to be very honest. I now read a book and I can't concentrate as long as I used to a few years ago. And so I made a decision that I don't want to live that kind of a life. And that's why I made very hard boundaries, because of the attention that it can suck away from us.
So talking about productivity, I want to give an example on how I started my year. The first week of January, we as a family went skiing up in the Alps. We have a place in the Engadine as a family, and every year, it's my favorite week of the year is to go skiing. We're all involved as a family. We go skiing all day. This year, 2 of my boys actually started snowboarding, and then in the evenings there's a sauna, there's an ice bath in the Alps. It's idyllic. It's this mountain village full of snow. We had a wonderful time. I had no calls, no emails, no conversations outside of my own little family. And we did that. The week after that, I had scheduled for 1 week 50 meetings from Monday to Friday. Now, how can you do 50 meetings? Well, with modern technology, Zoom calls that are 30 minutes long, you can easily
if
do
you don't
50
need
meetings.
to go to the restroom.
Well,
Funny story. You send a picture into the family WhatsApp group, and looking at your schedule, and it was kind of booked the whole way through. Every half an hour, another one, and you were like, "When do I pee?"
Yeah.
This became your existential problem
Of that week.
of week number 2.
Yeah, so week number 2 was 50.
Next time, tell your executive assistant to block some time.
No, but here's how it actually unfolds. So if you have 50 meetings,
Yes.
I literally had so if people tell me like, oh, I'm doing too many calls or blah blah, I do 50 meetings a week if I want to, and I go one after the other. I don't schedule lunch, I don't schedule breakfast, I don't schedule dinner. I just go all the way through. So for me, this thing going in sprints. I could have probably done some in the first week and some in the second week if I had, but I decided 1 week is totally off, and 1 week is totally on. And because something comes up with people that they can't attend the meeting, and then I go and use the restroom when someone doesn't show up in a call. Okay, but here's in terms of productivity, the first week I would actually say was incredibly productive. I made some huge personal and business decision in the first week, skiing up in the mountains. I would have never had the headspace to think some of the things through that I wanted to think through as I was up there in the mountains. I had the time, I had the space. And I think when it comes to productivity, incredibly productive. Now, the second week was also incredibly productive. I did some business that week. I had some objectives that I want to achieve during that week. I didn't just say random calls here, believe me. I had a very specific agenda. On Friday evening, I went for a nice piece of steak with myself and celebrated a fantastic, productive week because I literally had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish that week. And so, so for me, one of the lessons we need to put out here is that I meet so many business guys who are always on. Mm-hmm. And while they're on, they try to take off. They're on and off. And I would say when I'm not wired like that. I can't relax and be on full steam at the same time. It just doesn't work. So you need to have times where basically you don't take hostages. You just go for the kill. You're just going one after the other, and you're highly driven, highly on operational, mode of. And then there's the times where you totally are off, and there should be a wall in between the two. And both are productive, and this is why when we talk about productivity, we always think of just getting things done.
Yeah.
The world that I navigate with our businesses, our investments, all the things that we through our family office are involved in, productivity is also strategic decisions. And I don't make them while I'm in conversations, and I need some space away, to.
Well, we all know that our best ideas are coming in the shower. I know some of my best ideas are happening in the sauna. So it really is this context. If we're in a different environment, that there is different ways, and we have enough research now that it kind of shows what is actually happening. That our creativity is sparked by these things. So there is an aspect of productivity that is so crucial there. But I think the underlying principle behind that is this time batching. So basically, if you, it's the same with email. If you put down email, that 20 minutes a day you do email. If you put that into the calendar, 20 minutes, that's when you do email. That's when you do your messages on WhatsApp or whatever. And the rest, you don't worry about email or WhatsApp. All of a sudden, there is a whole different focus of productivity because you're not switching a context all the time. So I remember, I have this exercise of creating kind of my perfect day every year. What does my perfect work day look like? And a few years ago, I kind of said I don't like meetings in the mornings. I don't like having half an hour meeting at 10 o'clock and then I do something else and there's another appointment at 11:30 and then at 2, and I was like that is really just draining me. and my deep work and my creativity and actually my joy. So I only do meetings, between 2 and 6, and we pack that full. There are a few exceptions. When we have to navigate Asia and America on the same time, I make an exception, and with India, I normally try to start a little bit earlier. But otherwise than that, basically, this is kind of the time. So I know the first hours of my day, and that's kind of for me the biggest kind of productivity thing is that to keep that open, but always know what I'm going to work on in these hours, knowing what I'm going to concentrate on. Having set the Ivy League method, it's called. Schwab in the early 90s kind of hired Ivy League kind of to help him in his for his productivity, and he said he's going to do one thing. He needs his executives for 3 hours. And then basically he will tell them a method, and if he likes it, he can send them whatever compensation that he wants. And he actually, it was such a tremendous change that the Ivy League method that he did that Schwab paid him $25,000 back 1917 or 18, for these 3 hours of consultancy, which are a few hundred thousands now, which basically sums up to say, okay, you know what? Before you leave the day, write down the 6 things for the next day in order of priority, and then the next day start with number 1, then start do number 2, number 3. If something takes longer and you don't get to number 5 and 6, it comes to the list of the following day. Now, I don't think that we can do in our times. So there are some times where we're going to be interrupted, and so I limit it to 3 things. So I work on 3 things, but this method alone basically will save you. Because you know the night before what are the 3 things that I'm going to work on in the mornings. You're going to push through. You're going to really get some work done before you do some meetings where your energy is a little lower. For me, it's always in the afternoon, so that I don't give my best energy into kind of meetings that they don't need 100% of my energy, because I get some energy out of these meetings. So that alone, basically knowing what result I want, what having allocated time to it and having space to do that, you really can help you work on the very important stuff that is not urgent, but that you kind of know you need to get to.
Well, let's talk about meetings and being productive in meetings. So here's the number 1 question that I like to ask at the beginning of a meeting. What do you want as an outcome of this meeting? If we clarify that at the beginning, we can cut short a lot of long conversations that we have. Because if a person we're meeting with tells us at the beginning, this is what I would like to see out of that meeting. Sometimes people are very fuzzy. I'm actually often quite surprised. People enter into meetings and they just want to talk, or it's just general ideas, blah blah blah, brainstorming whatsoever. I actually try to enter every meeting with the goal what I want to achieve, and if we get that out at the beginning, we can cut something very very short. That's why even a 15-minute meeting we can cut a 2-hour meeting into 15 minutes if we clarify things at the beginning. So if you have lots of people on your staff, lots of employee meetings, staff meetings, if you introduce that into your business, I think you can boost your productivity because you can clarify things in the first 5 minutes that normally would perhaps take you an hour.
Well, it's with everything, even with the time that you want to work on something yourself. If you take the time to really ask, what's the objective? What is the result? What is the outcome, the intention of really doing this? What I really want to get out of this? Every conversation, every call, if you do that, actually, I think it's an exercise I learned from the Tony Robbins, who basically does that. That every morning I'm asking myself, what are the 3 results I want to see today? And that's part of my journaling. What do I want today to really have as an outcome, not as an activity, but what does that activity should lead to? What is that conversation going to be? And it's interesting. The first times I started, I really showed experienced kind of a noticeable difference in just the way I would show up, because I would know what I was basically, I showed up to win. There's a difference if you just show up to play or there's a show up to win. And if you don't know what winning looks like, you will just play the game, and it's nice, but it's often a waste. But if you know what really the win looks like, then you can be much more productive.
Another thing that I want to add on productivity is that you need to think through what two things you can combine in one. What two things can you combine and actually do in one time slot? So, a very simple example. Part of my routine when I'm home is I go to the gym every evening and do my exercise, physical exercise. Now, another goal that I have is always to read lots of books per year. This year, I actually want to read 72 books, and I'm ticking, every week some books. This year, actually, I want to read 24 Spanish books. So, because I want to, kind of work further on my Spanish. So I have 24 books in Spanish. But what I want to put together is that I started listening to audiobooks while I'm in the gym. So in a sense, I'm combining, physical exercise with mental exercise in one. And I'm ticking off two things that I want for my life in one time slot. And so, this is something that, you can think through your own, goals and habits. What can you combine? Let me give you another example. I know people who take their kids to school in the morning. There's a commute of, let's say, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Now, a commute is a commute. Normally, we would say a commute is a wasted time. We're sitting in traffic. And how about you design what you talk about with your kids in doing these 20 or 30 minutes every morning? You don't just enter the car without any random plan, but you kind of sit down, let's say for this month, what are the 10 topics you want to have a meaningful conversation with your kids? And you just stick that into the commute time as you're traveling in the car. Basically, you take two things, school education for your kids is important, meaningful conversation is important, and you're basically combining it and putting it into one slot.
Yeah. So one thing that also helped me with productivity is really understanding that my mind is a great tool to come up with ideas, and it's a really bad tool in actually storing ideas. So if so often basically there's an idea that comes or something that I need to do or that I think that somebody else needs to do. And I realize I can't hold that thought very, very long. So I really kind of worked hard in making my phone basically a delegation tool. So the way that works is basically for all my direct reports when it comes to staff, basically I have just one button that I can push, and I can leave a note that I basically goes to the list of when I talk with them on our one-on-one that I want to mention. So that alone it's so simple, but has been so helpful. Even in our conversation, there's so many times, I'm like, I need to talk with Chris about that. I press this button, and then when we talk, basically, I have the list of all the things. I even have that for my wife, because I forget during the day what I actually want to talk to my wife about. I'm this introvert that where my wife is talking the whole time. I'm just a good observant husband, but and so she complained a few years ago that I don't share so much from my life, and so I'm like, okay. I need to take some notes here. I need a system. I need to design this, and so it's basically a thought comes. Basically, I can hit it. So it's not just to-dos. It's also kind of things I want to kind of share. But with staff, it's great because it's immediately basically it's in their list. I can pull it up. I don't need a lot of preparation. I can then go through it. At the same time, I have a button. Basically, I can push if I know that something needs to be done and it needs to go to an assistant or an operational manager from from one of our businesses, then basically I can push a button and I can speak into this, into the phone. It actually transcribes the audio and makes it very clear. And then basically I can push another button and it goes straight into the task management tool, in our case Trello, as a task for this person to actually get done. And so I can be on the road, in the mornings when I kind of work on my own, but ideas come and I can get a lot of one-way communication, get a lot of things done, delegated, taken care of, because there's a simple system on how. You are laughing.
I'm
right?
laughing. Yeah, because you're always looking for the new hack when it comes to technology, like new apps on how to use them and how to manage people through that, which I love, and I think it's wonderful. I'm more old school. When I think of productivity, let me just say one of the things that I think about is physical space. So I have physical locations where I do some work and I don't do other stuff. In our modern world, because we're all so interconnected with phones and emails and laptops that we carry around, people are always doing everything wherever they are. And for me, actually, I know I'm more productive in certain physical locations. So as I mentioned earlier here, I had a week of 50 calls that I did. Kind of in 1 week. Well, let me just tell you, I didn't just set up the course, I also set up that physical location where I flew in order to have these 50 calls. Because in another environment, I wouldn't have been able to be that productive. Mm-hmm. And so, and then I shared about, going up to the Swiss Alps to kind of clear my mind and do some strategic thinking. So I'm thinking about physical location a lot. Where do I do what? Okay, I don't try to do everything everywhere, but that's where I feel like almost like I'm old school. Perhaps this is old school. Perhaps this is just there are things I do on airplanes because I sit a lot on airplanes. I know when I hit an airplane, I know what I'm doing there. Yeah. I do stuff on airplanes that I don't do anywhere else in the world. I only do it on airplanes. And so, this is for me one productivity hack in a sense, like old school.
Well, in the new school, old school, I think in the end, the principle behind it is you need to design it. You need to be the architect of your space, of the way you want to work. If you're just reacting all the time, basically, then you are not going to be as productive. You need to design your day. You need to design how the work you want to get done and how you want to get it done. So I hope through some of these
this has been productive
ideas,
for you.
This has been a productive half an hour or so. If not, I'm sorry, but there is something you can take away, and hopefully it will save you at least 10 hours. And excited to see you or hear you in the next episode again.